Our topic for today, I've been invited to talk to you about setting work boundaries. But first, let me introduce who I am. I am from Haraya Coaching. Our company's vision in Haraya is that we see a world where every Filipino has a kaharaya and everyone can be there imaginable. So how do we do this? How do we help you imagine what you can be? We do this via conversations, and the conversation is done in the form of coaching. So we are a company, we provide corporate coaching programs. We also do one-on-one coaching with coaches like myself, and we design coach development programs for coaches who or for people who want to be coaches as well. Now, me personally, I have been on the experience. My experience is for about 30 years in the corporate world in a multinational company, and more than half of that is really around human resources, particularly in organization development and learning and development. But in the last 8 years, I think, I have been devoting myself to this role of a coach and a mentor. And I am actually now a life coach, an executive coach, an action learning coach, and very recently, especially during this pandemic and even before the pandemic, I have been into wellness coaching, particularly for emotional, mental health, and psychological health. All right, so that's who I am. And I am interested in this topic, or really very happy to share this topic, because it has been one of my key factors for having achieved a successful sort of career, also a happy and fulfilling life. And that's what I call being able to set boundaries at work. Let's first consult the dictionary. Now, let's be technical about this. When we say boundary, what comes to mind is that it is a line, di ba? It marks the limits. Tulad ng boundary between Bulacan, kunwari, and Pampanga, may delineation, may linya, may limitation, may sarili area or border. Some of the similar words would be border, frontier, dividing line, and partition. But I'd like to focus your attention to the word frontier, because both the borders or dividing line or partitions all pertain to limits. Frontier, on the other hand, pertains to an area, a work, a jurisdiction, which, if I would like to translate it to as an opportunity, the new frontiers, diba? When we say we want to cover new frontiers, is actually presenting us not limits, but opportunities to cover new area, new ground. And therefore, that's what I want to focus on. When we talk about boundaries, please consider that it is not only about limitations, but these are enablers para mas lalo tayong maging productive, happy, and fulfilled. So the real need to set boundaries, because they will enable us to achieve these three things. How do I do it? What are the parameters to set your boundaries? So I'd like to talk about three things. There are many tips for how to set your boundaries. Pero siguro at this point, I just want to consider tatlong importante. And if you're able to do this, you're on your way to really making your life more fulfilling and more productive. So what are those three not so simple, but yet so important things? First, you have to assess ano bang boundaries ang ilalagay mo, and you have to anchor it on a personal value. So that means my boundary may be different from yours. What works for me may be not working for you. Kaya every one of us will have probably sometimes similar, but also quite unique boundaries for each of us. What determines this is what is important for us, or what we personally value. So some of the questions you can ask yourself as you try to set up your boundary is, what are your priorities? Ano ba ang importante sa akin? What does truly matter for me today? And what determines the priorities would be your role, di ba? Yung status mo. So if I think of myself like last year or late last year in October, my priorities were quite different, because what happened to me late last year, in October, the last quarter, I became a grandmother. So medyo nag-iba yung priorities ko. Now that I'm a lola and the grandson is actually living with me, it's important for me to take care of this bagong child also with us in the family, the new addition to the family. So some of my priorities have to, be set aside so that this child also takes one of that priority in my life. And I am so happy with my Lola life. Okay. Now, what do I choose to do and not to do? Now, when I got invited to this talk today, these are the things I choose to do. I really love being able to talk about things that can help because I'm a learning and development practitioner as well. And I get into this practice because I not only develop myself, but in so doing, I help develop others. So may fulfillment for me in that sense. And I choose to do a lot of recently more coaching sessions. I used to do a lot of projects even for the government as a consultant and even now, no, that are about mga big tasks like organization development, restructuring, or mergers and acquisitions, change management. And don't get me wrong, I still love to do that. I still do it. But I choose to do some of them or prioritize more yung coaching. So between a job that calls for a coach and a job that calls for a consultant, priority goes to a coach, especially coaching people who are suffering from mental and emotional distress. Now, I'm not a psychologist or a psychiatrist. I'm what we call a first aid coach. No, that's what I do. Pag meron na talagang scenario that really needs a psychiatrist or psychologist, then I refer them to that. But going back to what I'm saying, I'm choosing to do more coaching sessions because it allows me to help people to help themselves solve their problems on their own capacity. So what do I choose not to do? I don't do other things that I used to do, like I said, yung mga report writing. I don't do that so much nowadays, no, except when real emergencies call for it. Otherwise, this is the kind of job I do, speaking, because also in speaking, I think I'm able to multiply my influence, no, to be able to help others. Because sometimes, like in one airline, I talked about wellness and meditation, and in one of the associations, it's medical practitioner, but not really your medical sort of people medical practice. I talked about 2,000 people also on self-care. And how do you care for yourselves during the times of stress? So these are things that I choose to do. And when I start my day, so this is so important. There's a limit to what we can do. Ambitious. I used to be very ambitious. I want to do and accomplish a lot of things. But over the years, I learned that really quality is much more important and the impact of what we do. So the night before, like last night before I came to this day, I really already am thinking about what are my top 3 tomorrow? How does my day look like? Top 3, maximum 5. And that includes not just work, but also part of it would be some of the things that I do in my personal life. So in the top 3 to 5 already, is a combination of that. And I'm not a fan of multitasking. I used to do that when I was younger. I think that I could multitask, but I think it's a myth as my experience. And why? Because really the mind can work better if you're so focused on doing one thing at a time with quality. So top 3 to 5 in a day. And you think about that the night before, no? Para hindi ka nagka-cramming. Pagdating mo, hindi mo alam kung anong gagawin mo. At your desk, you don't know what you're going to do. You have to be able to think about that the night before. And lastly, I always think about this. My boundaries are I do things that I enjoy most and gives me fulfillment. So that's one of the criteria. I don't know what works for you, but these are some of the questions I ask myself when I'm working on putting up my boundaries. And I hope that works for you as well. Second thing, tayong mga Pilipino, no? So even if we have already to ourselves decided on some of our boundaries, parang ang hirap nating i-communicate ito clearly and timely. Kasi nasa sa atin yung mapagbigay, nahihiya, di ba? Nakikisama, sige na lang, okay na lang, magtsatsaga, magpapasensya, kahit na nakakross yung boundaries. But really what I've learned from working cross-culturally, what I say, it is important for us to be very clear, and so much more even in our own culture as a Filipino. Filipino. Kasi we have to be direct and simple in what we want, in stating what works for us. For example, when someone calls for a meeting for me, no, to me on a Saturday or a Sunday, before, sobrang career-oriented ako, sige, patol, I'll do that. But nowadays, I really say, and I'm very direct when I say, I don't do meetings over the weekends anymore. So if you want my help, let's try and meet between Monday to Friday. And even, as simple as putting that on the email, for example, diba may mga email signatures, you can write there, after your name and say, I'm available to respond to you between 9 to 5, on Monday to Friday. If that works for you can put it there. So be direct and simple. Kesa yung pakikiramdaman or you allow the person to just guess. People are not mind readers. And you get into trouble and a lot of misconceptions, misinterpretations, and misjudgments if you don't really say it directly, what works and what is important for you. And secondly, when your boundary is crossed or stepped over, tayo mga Pilipino, sige na lang, okay lang yan, palagpasin na lang, one time lang naman. Paano kung sa second time, third time, and you let things slide? What happens is, di ba nagpa-pile up? And what happens when it piles up? Don't know about you, pero ako, usually I'm so patient, but when things pile up, I can become a Mount Pinatubo. I'm really a sleeping volcano, and people get then surprised at natataranta, saan nanggaling yun? Bakit nagwala, diba? And so therefore, it becomes a source of frustrations or misunderstandings around us. So if your boundary has been crossed or stepped over, do it politely and say, kanina, I felt like this, I got a little bit frustrated because you gave me something that I did not ask for. Yung ganon. So it's really about recognizing how you feel and respecting that feeling and allowing the people to understand how you're feeling. It is not about being selfish when you do this. It is about really caring for yourself and for others. Kasi nga, ayaw mong maging Hulk, right? All right. Not enough said, I think, about that. Third, and very important, equally important, like for me, kasi I used to be a people pleaser and it was difficult for me to learn to say no before. But nowadays, I really have to say no, and I say it without feeling guilty. The reason being, I have to say no to something that I do not want to do or do not want to accept, even if it's good or it was done and presented in a very polite way. I say politely also no and not feel guilty because my intention is very clear. I don't want to overpromise and I don't want to overcommit. So if I can't do anything or if I cannot do something, I'd really rather say, thank you for thinking of me, including me. Like yesterday lang, there was a project and this friend wanted me to be in that project and it will pay well. But then I thought it might also, affect her reputation because I won't be able to attend to it since I already am full. And no matter how much I want to help her in that project, it might cause her only difficulties because I won't be able to attend the meetings and all of that. So I kindly said no and said why. And I always remember this. When you say yes to something, you are saying no to another and vice versa. What do we mean by this? Because we only have a very, time. Time is our resource here. And when it's full, when my time is full, and then something else comes in, that means if I accept that and I say yes to that, I'll have to say no to something else. I won't be doing something, right? And what if it's important also, those other things that I already said yes to? So it's important for us to honor our commitment prior, especially. And if you're a leader naman, or people leader, or you're part of a team, maybe you can delegate some of those work that you find has been given to you and say that it's an opportunity for others also to do and get improved on, if you can. This is one option also. And never be shy or afraid to ask for help. When you do need to ask and say, I really cannot do that because I don't know how to do this, so don't be afraid to ask for help. Your boundary, no one else does that for you. No one else makes that choice but yourself. So my boundary is my choice. And when it's clear to me, the reasons for my boundaries, I can really adhere to it, right? Kapag alam mo yung why of doing things, you will be able to consistently do it. Now your life, our life matters, my life matters. So I choose and uphold my boundaries no matter what. I continue to in the face of that, my challenges, I will always try to uphold it because it is upholding also my personal values. And my boundaries, I don't think of that as limitations. My boundaries are enablers for me to live a productive, happy, and fulfilling life. So I hope that this has helped you also find a way to set your own boundaries if you haven't yet. And if you have already set them up, that you would be able to continue to uphold them and continue to live a productive, happy, and fulfilling life as well. Thank you.